Now, there are two settings there. Then the settings there are of spatial setting. Then we also have what we call temporal setting. The spatial setting has to do with place, where events in a literary work occur, or the events in a literary work take place. We call it spatial. That is S-P-A-T-I-A-L. Then we also have temporal setting. The temporal setting has to do with time, period, that the events in a literary work all take place. So the title once again is what? Antony and Cleopatra. The author, or whom we can call the playwright, is William Shakespeare. The genre is tragedy, and that is historical drama. The setting is ancient Rome and Egypt, and the time setting is around 30 to 31 BC. Main characters are Mark Antony, who is the leading character. We have Cleopatra, then we have Octavius, Caesar, and Enobarbus. So all these are the main characters in the story. Now let's look at the background and context. For every literary work, if you want to understand it very, very well, the first thing we need to look at what gives birth to this particular literary work. So whatever is happening in the surrounding environment where the writer resides or in the writer's life always inspire the writer to write whatever he writes. Nobody just sleeps and wakes up and feels like I have been inspired to write. It doesn't happen that way. It must take its root, whatever you write must take its root from something happening, either to you as a personal experience or something that is happening around you. Will always be the reason why people write. So having said that, the background and context, we have Antony and Cleopatra was written around 1606 to 1607 then, and it is one of Shakespeare's Roman plays. When we say Roman plays, it has to do with what now? Play written during the period or era of the Roman Empire. In the study of literature, we have different eras. We have the Victorian era, we have the Elizabethan era, we have the Roman era. So one of the eras when we have the Italians being the one ruling the world is what we call what the Roman era or the Roman Empire then. So this play was written during that particular period based on Plutarch's historical account of the real Roman leader Mark Antony and the Egyptian queen Cleopatra. So the play explores the conflict between love and duty. These are the things we want to look at in the play. The play has something to do with what now? Love and duty. How some characters or two characters were able to blend what we call love with duty. That is job call. Then we have East and West. When we talk about East, we are talking about Egypt. When we talk about West, we are talking about Europe, which is what? Italy. So the passion and politics. We also talk about love for doing something and doing something for the sake of what we want to gain from it. That is politics. Then it portrays the fall of great leaders through their human weaknesses. So this story is actually going to, it portrays more of how great leaders in the society fall due to their weaknesses. In literature, please, I would like you to always note certain things. I believe you all have your writing materials there because I'll be saying certain things that you just have to note that are very germane to your study of literature. Now, in literature, whenever there is a downfall of the main character or the protagonist in a story, and it is due to his weaknesses. In literature, we call it tragic flaw. We call it tragic flaw, meaning that the weakness of that particular character causes his downfall in that story. So especially excessive love and pride. These are some of the things that are evidenced in this. Now, let me look at the story. And I really want you to pay attention to the plot summary. In the plot summary, Act 1 of it talks about love and politics. That is what we are able to see in Act 1 because it's a play. Then let me quickly chip in this. There is always difference between a drama and a play. What we are reading presently and studying is called a play. The moment it is acted out on stage, it becomes a drama. So what I'm actually teaching presently now, I'm teaching a play. So in the play, we have Act 1. The Act 1 centers on love and politics. So there is going to be a conflict between love and what now? And politics. So the play opens in Alexandria. That is one of the settings. This Alexandria is actually in Egypt. Then here Mark Antony. Mark Antony, one of the greatest warriors then. Mark Antony, one of the three rulers of triumvirate, meaning after the death of the leader, the Roman king, the emperor. After the death of the Roman emperor, there were certain rulers that took over the empire while a new emperor will emerge. So there were three of them. So this Mark Antony happens to be one of them. So of Rome. He lives with what now? He decides it was shown in the first in that particular act that Mark Antony visits leaves Rome to visit Cleopatra in Egypt. Now there are two places now. Cleopatra lives in Egypt. She is a queen in Egypt. While we have Mark Antony comes from Rome and where she is one of the three rulers there in Rome. I want you to decode that. Then Antony neglects his political duties and spends his time in luxury and pleasure with Cleopatra. So this time around now, Antony decides to leave Rome. He leaves Rome where he should be performing his political duties and for love decides to come to what now? To the eastern part, which is what now? The in
Is lava. That is Cleopatra. So it continues. We have what? News arrives that his wife, who happens to be Fulvia, has died. And there are political troubles in Rome. You know, there are three rulers, as I said, in Rome at that particular time, who are brothers. So a report now got to him while in Egypt that the wife is dead. Now that the wife is dead and there is what political troubles, that is one of these three rulers is trying to take over everything. So when this happens now, it is expected that Mark Antony should be able to return to Rome to save his people and see to what is happening. So Antony decides to return to Rome, leaving Cleopatra in Egypt. So Act 2 now talks about political alliances. In government, we call something political alliances, which has to do with an agreement between two different parties that have got two different manifesto to run a government as one unit. So when we have this, we call it political alliances. So in Rome, Antony reconciles with Octavius Caesar and Lepidus, the other triumvirs. You know, I said there are three rulers. So the other two are Octavius, which is Caesar, Octavius Caesar, and Lepidus. So he reunites with them. Then while reuniting with them to strengthen the peace, Antony decided to marry Octavia Caesar's sister, Caesar's wife, meaning one of the rulers. He decided to marry one of them because that is the condition he is given, that except you marry my sister, forget about it. This trouble in Rome will continue. We are going to hijack the government and all this. So he decides and accepts that. Then remember, he left one of his lover, who happens to be the queen of Egypt, there in what? Alexandria in Egypt. So he decided to marry Caesar's sister For what now? Just for political reasons. So that what from his people, he will be able to get that. Now that he has actually returned to Rome, leaves his lover in what? In Egypt. So here he has to marry Caesar's sister, so that the war in Rome will cease. There will be ceasefire. So in doing this, he decides to marry, see, that is Caesar's sister, because, or let me just say, for political reasons. It does not mean that he's actually in love with her. So, however, Cleopatra feels betrayed and angry when she learns of Antony's marriage. So, when Cleopatra, as a woman now, when she hears that, she feels Antony has betrayed her. That is what comes to her mind, that Antony has betrayed me. That means Antony returns to Rome to marry somebody else, and Antony is not going to marry her again. So that is her thought. So, and that is how Act 2 ends. Then in Act 3, there is war between Rome and Egypt. So the peace between Antony and Caesar does not last. You know why is it that it does not last? It does not last because it is on condition that they actually reach a compromise. And what is the condition? Marry my sister. The moment you marry my sister, you don't have a problem. So it's on condition married her sister. So now there is, the peace does not really what now last long. So Caesar accuses Antony of neglecting Rome and siding with Egypt. So one of the accuses from Caesar is that, why will you leave Rome where you are one of the rulers, ruling, having political duties for Egypt, all because of a woman? Then what breaks out between them? You know, it has always been like that. When somebody speaks against somebody whom you love dearly, there is always a problem. That is the way it is. There will always be a problem. So when somebody speaks against somebody whom you do not love, there you will feel, you will pick no offense. So the same thing happens here. So against the advice, now we have Antony chooses to fight at sea near Actium. Where they decide to fight is called what now? Actium. So this one was influenced by Cleopatra's desire to join the battle. So as a result, there breaks up another war between them. But this time around, this war is going to be between Caesar and who now? And Mark Antony. Now there is going to be a war between them. But because of love, Mark Antony still wants that particular battle to happen at a particular place. We call it what now? Actium. That is what now? On the sea. They want to fight at sea. So they want it to be there. Just because he wants his wife, or his wife to be, or whom we call his lover, that is Cleopatra, to do what now? To join in the battle. Because Cleopatra herself, being a woman, she's also a warrior on her own and the leader of her people. So during the battle, Cleopatra ships retreats. Now I want you to get this point very well. Why they were at the battlefront fighting. You know, Mark Antony is being supported by who now? By Cleopatra and Cleopatra's what now? Men. That is his army. The same thing. This time around, the fight is on, and something happened. Cleopatra decided to retreat when he finds out that she could no longer cope with the fight. She tries to what now? To retreat. Retreat simply means fleeing for her life. When she does that, all her army also what now? Follow her. So having done that, Antony now knows that he is only left with his own soldiers to fight the remaining battle. But he is so foolish to the extent that he has to also abandon his soldiers behind at the battlefront to follow suit behind who now? Cleopatra. So this makes who now? Caesar to win the battle. Can't you see that? That is foolishness. Foolishness on the part of who now? On the part of Mark Antony. Leaving his war now, leaving his soldiers behind to complete a fight only for her, for only for him to follow a lover. So the battle is now being won by who now? By Caesar. So Caesar wins the battle, which means he's going to be the new emperor of what now? Of Rome. So there we now have Act 4. Act 4 is where we now have what we call tragic decline. Remember, I mentioned something like tragic flaw the other time, when the weakness of a particular character, a leading character, cause his downfall. So Antony's honor and confidence are destroyed already. You know, the honor that he owns in Rome, it has been destroyed, because it will be in record that, could you believe it, somebody will call our warrior at war front, decide to leave the battle, leaves his soldiers behind, and decide to follow after a woman. So his confidence and honor is destroyed already. Thinking, and at the same time he's thinking that what now? Cleopatra has betrayed him again. You know, at first there are two accuses of betrayal now. The first person who accuses the other person of being betrayed is who now? Cleopatra. How does she do that now? She feels that the moment um, Antony leaves Alexandria, Egypt, for Rome, he marries another person. So with that, she has been betrayed. Now this time around, for Cleopatra retreating at the war front, it also shows to Mark Antony, he feels that he has also been betrayed. So it is now 1-1. Let me put it that way. So he becomes furious and decides to run after Cleopatra. But Cleopatra now did something. She does something here. She now sends one of his soldiers to tell Antony that she is dead. This time around, Antony now hears the news that Cleopatra is dead, whereas this is a fake death. It's just to pretend, because Cleopatra is like afraid of how furious Mark Antony will be with her. So when the news is related to Antony, Antony becomes heartbroken and falls on his own sword. So Antony now tells the person who brings the story, do you know what? You have to kill me by the sword. But that person insisted that he is not going to do that. So as a result, what does Antony do? Antony has to die by his own sword, by falling on his own sword. So he kills himself. Now see the irony. Why do you think Antony decided to kill himself? He kills himself because he feels out what now? Cleopatra is already dead, whereas that one pretends to be dead. Now, before dying, he now makes a statement. Before dying, he learns she is alive while he is now wriggling in pain, about to die. He now finds out that she is not dead. She only pretends that she is dead. She is alive, but at this particular time, it is too late. So when he finally dies, his body is being carried to Cleopatra. So when the body is taken to Cleopatra, and Cleopatra finds out that the Antony is dead, as a result of the fact that he hears that she is equally dead, that is why he has to kill himself. So Antony finally dies in Cleopatra's arms. So Act 5 now opens. At this point now, Caesar has planned to take Cleopatra. Now that the person with whom he fights the battle is dead, he has to seize Queen of Egypt, who is what now? Cleopatra, to himself. So that is what he intends to do. Now Cleopatra, a warrior on her own, hears this or knows this plan, decide that instead of facing humiliation in Rome, she will rather commit suicide and kill herself. Then how does she do this now? She brings out a particular snake. We call that snake asp, asp. She brings the snake. So she now decide to die by that snake because the snake is very poisonous. So she is being killed. So she dies beside Antony and both are buried together. Now the irony of it all is the both of them at the end of the play do not marry alive but marry when they are dead. So she dies beside Antony and both are buried together. So when Caesar sees this, that the both of them actually what now? Kill themselves. Okay, Caesar now feels that both of them are warriors. So as a result, he admires that their nobility in death and orders a royal burial for them both. So the both of them were given what we call a royal burial in Rome. So that is just how the story goes. So we have from the beginning, you could see it ends tragically because in the end, both leading character, the ones we could call the main characters, what happened to them at the end of that particular story? They both die and continue their love up to death. So we other scenes by scenes art. We have like scene one which happens in Egypt where Antony and Cleopatra are introduced as lovers. Their relationship is passionate but criticized by Roman soldiers. One of them happens to be what now? Caesar. Then Antony receives news that his wife, I'm trying to summarize everything I've said, receives news that his wife, what's his wife's name? That's Fovia, is dead and that Rome is in political chaos. So he decides to return to Rome. Then we have scene 2 to 5 where Cleopatra is angry and feels betrayed when Antony leaves Egypt for Rome. Then the contrast between Egypt's luxury and Rome's discipline begins to what? Appear, and that causes a battle. Then we also have alliance and jealousy. We have political alliances and we have what now? Jealousy. We have Caesar is jealous of Antony, but at the same time we could see that Antony marries who now? Octavius Caesar's. So who happens to be what now? Caesar's sister. So and from there that strengthens their alliances, which we can actually say it is Octavia is the person he marries rather. So and that is Caesar's sister. So that strengthens their political alliances and it is just for political reasons, not romantic reasons. Then we have from scene 3 to 7, Cleopatra becomes jealous. She becomes jealous of hearing of Antony's marriage and tension grows between personal love and political duty. Then when we look at Act 3 there, we have war is declared between Antony and Caesar and Cleopatra joins Antony in the sea battle at Actium. So against advice. When Cleopatra flee and retreats, Antony follows her, abandoning his men, and that marks his downfall and loss of honor and dignity in Rome. Then after that, we have scene 1 to 8, that's Act 4. We have Antony's forces are defeated because Antony has also retreated to follow love. Then we are believing Cleopatra has betrayed him. Antony curses her. Then Cleopatra, also afraid of anger, pretends to be dead. Then Antony is now heartbroken and falls on his own sword. Before dying, he is brought to Cleopatra and they reconcile before he dies. So when he dies, we have after that death and immortality. We have Caesar takes control of Egypt and plans to take Cleopatra to Rome as a trophy. So Cleopatra refuses to be humiliated by Caesar. So she puts on her royal robe and crown, takes an asp, that is a snake, and dies nobly beside Antony. So that is how Caesar praises them and orders a royal burial, recognizing their greatness in the death. Now let's look at main characters from there. Number one, we have Mark Antony, who happens to be the leading character and one of the three rulers in Rome. Then he is a great soldier and leader, but torn between duty and passion. His love for Cleopatra leads to his downfall, which represents a tragic hero. Then we can also say that leads to his tragic flaw. Then we have Cleopatra. She is the queen of Egypt. Very beautiful, intelligent, and manipulative. She actually manipulates Antony into committing suicide. So she is a symbol of passionate love. She's charming and powerful. So she truly loves Antony, but also enjoys controlling him. So her death shows her dignity, pride, and courage. Then we also have Octavius, this with Caesar. This is the future emperor. After Antony dies, then we have Octavius becomes the new emperor of Rome. It's Augustus. We have a cold, disciplined politician. He is a politician to the core. He doesn't treat politics with love. So he represents duty, order, and ambition. His victory marks the end of Antony's and Cleopatra's world of passion because he actually conquers them. Then there is another character there. We call him Enobarbus. Enobarbus is Antony's loyal follower and friend. He is always second in command to Antony. Then he decides that every time he speaks the truth to Antony. Even he warns him on several occasions about his action, but Antony has been blinded by love. So he acts as the voice of reason and realism. So he regrets betraying Antony and dies of guilt because at the end of the day he had to side with who now? With Octavius. Then we now have Chamia and Iras. Cleopatra's handmaid that dies with him is what we call what now? Chamia. So stay loyal to her until death. Then let's look at some of the themes that we can see in this particular Shakespeare's work. There are themes there. From what I have even mentioned, you could see the themes are always in twins. They are in twin. We have love and passion. When we talk about theme of love and passion, it is talking about who now? Two people. Who are the two people now? We look at Antony and Cleopatra. The Cleopatra and Antony, they are the ones that are lovebirds. So love is intense and passionate and destructive. You can see, why do we say, can somebody tell me why the love is destructive to them both? Now, why is the love that they both have for each other is destructive to Mark Antony? Who can tell me that? Why? Can somebody help?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm all yes.
What I think is that the love that Anthony had for Cleopatra later destroyed his forces when he had to leave them and follow Cleopatra.
Okay, that's very, very correct. That is why it is destructive, because through that particular love, Mark Antony loses his mantle of power as one of the rulers in Rome. And at the same time, it is still this same senseless love that brings him his untimely death. That's it. So that's very good. We have their love defies reasons and politics, but leads to tragedy. Why do we think, if we say their love leads to tragedy, who can tell me what do we mean by that?
Later, sir,
Okay, I'm all yes.
later, Anthony died because Cleopatra manipulated that also. So that is destruction in a way that both of them had to die.
Correct. Both of them are to lose their lives. So that is why we say it leads to tragedy. Because what we expect that should be love should be enjoyed on earth, not after death. So we have the play explores how love can be both noble and ruinous. When you love with sense, it will be noble. But when you love and you do not know when to stop, it can also lead to what? Destruction. That is theme of love and passion. Then the second one, we have duty and betrayal. Whom do you think this one is talking about? Duty and betrayal is still talking about what? Mark Antony and Cleopatra. You can see that Antony's conflict between love for Cleopatra and duty to Rome leads to betrayal of both. Because at first, Antony leaves his duty as a ruler in Rome only to settle for love with Cleopatra. And as a result, this to Cleopatra is still seen as betrayal, because the betrayal now came in two different ways. One, it leads to marrying getting married to another person in Rome. Then at the same time, Cleopatra also fleeing while the war or the battle is very hot. So Enobarbus betray Antony too, and Cleopatra betrays him emotionally. So we can see both Enobarbus, whom I said is a loyal friend to Antony, also betrays him. He also betrayed him, but his betrayal is actually unintentional, but he has to face the reality. Then the third theme is what? Power and politics. We can see the struggle for power between Antony and Caesar shows the clash of personal desire and political responsibility. We can see that from the struggle for power between them, we can see Caesar is more politically inclined than who now? Than Antony, who treats politics with love, putting politics on one side and facing love, where it should be what now? Handling his political duties. So Caesar represents order and political ambition, while Antony represents passion and personal loyalty. So he's only loyal to Antony is only loyal. He's not loyal to his people. He's not loyal to his soldiers. He's not loyal to Rome, his country. He's only loyal to who now? Cleopatra. He's only loyal to Cleopatra. That and his passion. That is the love he has for him. So another theme here is the theme of East versus West. When we talk about East, I will know if you are following. Where is referred to as the East and where is refers to as the West. I want another person to answer this question. From the story, where is refers to as the East and where is the West? Anybody?
The east is Egypt and the west is Rome.
Correct. So the East is actually was Egypt, while we have the West is Rome, which is Italy. So Egypt symbolizes pleasure, love, beauty, and emotion, because that is where Mark Antony goes to see love. He's being treated with grandeur and he with good given awesome welcome there. Unlike Rome, Rome symbolizes duty, discipline, war, and power. That is what you have in Rome. So the two of them represent two different things. Then Antony is caught between the two words. So it's neither here or neither there. So the heart of Egypt and the head of Rome. You can see that his heart is in Egypt. When I say Antony's heart is that of Egypt and the head is that of Rome, who can explain that metaphor? I've just used a metaphor there. What does it mean? When we say the heart is Egypt and we have the head is Rome, what do we mean? I've used a metaphor. What does it mean?
Sir, what I think is that his head is of Rome in the sense that he owns, like, he has a duty to the people of Rome.
Okay.
His heart belongs to Egypt. in the
Because
sense
of
that they
who?
welcomed him well.
In
Not
Egypt,
Cleopatra.
yes, because of Cleopatra. That means that art has to do with love. Why the head has to do with duty. You understand that very well. Then we now have next one. We have honor and reputation. Antony's senses of honor is central to his strategy, his tragedy. So to him, what he sees as honor is not what is actually honor. He loses his military reputation at the same time because of his passion for Cleopatra. In death, both lovers regain dignity and are remembered as noble. Why? Because they believe they have died as warriors. So then we have death and immortality is another theme. Theme of death and immortality. The lover's death are not only tragic but also glorious and romantic, because you find out that they love each other and at the same time one has to die in the arms of the other, and the other also has to commit what now? Commit suicide, die beside the first one that has died. So that is what we call what now? Through death they achieve freedom and eternal unity. Now the both of them are dead. The both of them are buried the same time and they are buried together. So that simply shows that what we have death and we have immortality, because both of them are put together forever in death. So we have symbols and meaning. There are symbols. You have mentioned some of them for me in this story. In this story here, we have the symbols that we have here. Then we also have their meanings. I talk about asp, the one I call asp. What do I call it? It's death, and it represents what? Cleopatra, royal and fearless end. Rome represents duty, honor, rationality and politics. Egypt represents passion, emotion, beauty and pleasure. Then we have the sea battle at Actium portray Antony's moral weakness and loss of control, because normally he is not supposed to take that particular battle to the sea. Then Cleopatra's ship and attire represent her charm, alluring and queenly majesty, the way she dresses. So let's look at the style and language. We have one thing about William Shakespeare is the way he writes his play. He writes it as if he's writing a poem, but it's always on rhyme. So it's always having what we call free verse. So he writes as if he's writing poem. That is why most time when you read his work, it may not be well understood until you have read it several times, because he has his own English that we call what now? William Shakespeare's English. So we have imagery of nature. We have the sea and royalty to reflect love and power. Now, can somebody tell me what is meant by imagery in literature? When we talk about imagery in literature, what are we referring to? We are referring to using words to create picture in the mind of the reader. When words can create images, pictures in the mind of the reader or audience, we call it imagery. You will read, you are just reading mere words and it will look as if you could see it. When you mention something like the sea, you can simply see it in the mind, in your mind, in the mind, that this is how a sea looks like and something like that. That is what we call imagery in literature. Then we have figurative language. William Shakespeare, when you read this particular play, it makes use mostly of what now? Metaphors, similes, hyperboles to express grandeur and passion. Then he also makes use of what now? Contrast. What is the contrast now? Egypt's sensuality, then versus Rome's discipline. The two places represent two different things. Then we have the tone. The tone of the play is passionate and tragic and majestic. Majestic in the sense that they are power. Then we have passionate, it expresses love. Then we have tragic, it talks about an unhappy ending. So now let me bring you some of the quotations that we have from this particular play. We are, let Rome in Tiber melt and the wide arc of the range empire fall. Here is my space. Antony is the one that made that statement. Shows Antony's devotion to Cleopatra over Rome. Then there is another aspect of the play when you read it, where Enobabus said something. He said, age cannot wither her, nor custom still her infinite variety. So Enobabus is trying to praise the beauty of Queen Cleopatra. Yeah, he described Cleopatra's timeless beauty and charm. Then there is another quote from the story, from the place. See, I am dying, Egypt is dying. Who says this now? That is Antony. Expresses Antony's love and tragedy in death. Then there is another one there. We have, give me my robe, put on my crown. Who said this now? It is readiness to die with dignity, and that is said by Cleopatra when she is ready to die beside Antony. We have the breaking of, okay, the breaking of so great a thing should make a great crack. It is Caesar that says this. That is when he recognizes Antony's greatness even in death. Now, let me take you through the moral lessons we want to get from this story. Number one is excessive passion can lead to destruction. When you love something too much, it can lead to destruction. Yes, whatever you love, you must love something with a bit of consideration so that it doesn't lead to your destruction. Then number two is what? Duty and self-control are essential for leadership. And Mark Antony does not have what we call self-control, and he has lost his duty, and that is what leads to his destruction. Then another thing is what? Love and loyalty should not blind one to responsibility. You can see love and loyalty to Cleopatra blindfolded who now? Mark Antony to his what? To his responsibility, and he allows his forces, his soldiers, to just be killed cheaply. Then true honor can be regained even in death. That's another thing.